Send heroes from your tavern to protect the village from invading monsters, train peasants, and upgrade your heroes to complete quests and defeat more monsters to earn the favor of the king and be named the new Earl Marshal. Welcome to Tabletop Reviews. I'm Matt Mitchell. Allow me to teach you Meeples Monsters, a bag building game for 2 to 4 players designed by Ole Steinnes and published by AEG. To set up the game, place the city board in the middle of the table and place the final encounter scoreboard nearby. Place the henchman card in its designated spot and the 3 Dark Overlords in their designated places. Shuffle the 6 Dark Council bonus tiles and deal 1 under each of the Dark Overlords and the henchmen. I'll explain these cards and bonuses later in the video. Give each player a player board, bag, and 3 tokens of a matching color. Give all players 7 white peasant meeples and 3 gray corruption meeples. Players can add all their meeples into their bags. Place a token for each player on the scoreboard starting with 0 points. Shuffle the quest cards and deal 2 to each player. Quest cards come in 3 types. Triggered, which is revealed as soon as its requirement is met, gaining any instant bonuses and points for this card. Ongoing quests are also revealed as soon as their requirement is met, gaining the points and an ongoing ability for the remainder of the game. Lastly, we have endgame quests, which are never revealed but will score points at the end of the game. For any quests not completed at the end of the game, you will lose points as indicated in the red portion of the banner. Examples we have here are defeat a level 2 or higher monster with a yellow and red meeple. You can have a yellow and red meeple and any additional meeples required to kill a monster. This one requires that during your draw phase, you have at least 2 yellow meeples in your tavern. And this endgame quest wants you to have at least 5 red meeples. Before we set up the monster deck, let's go over the cards and all the symbols you'll find on them. In the top right-hand corner, you'll find a colored symbol that matches the area on the city board this monster will spawn when it is drawn. In the left-hand corner, you'll find a number. This indicates the strength that you must meet or exceed with your units to defeat this monster. Below that is the monster's type. We have humanoid, monstrous, and undead monsters. These will be important for quests such as this, which requires you to have only monstrous and undead in your defeated pile, and you'll earn 6 points. When a monster is defeated, you will immediately gain the points indicated in the purple banner on the card. You will also gain any bonus actions such as draw 2 quest cards and then discard 1, or gain any meeples, which is indicated beside the monster's name to avoid confusion with combat advantages. Combat advantages are strength boosters for specific unit types or for using unit types together. For example, after defeating the Mangrove Bandit, yellow mage units will have +1 strength. And after defeating the Tree Beast, all red clerics will have +1 strength when placed with at least 1 blue warrior meeple. To set up the monster deck, separate the monsters by level, as indicated by the number of dots on the right side of the card. If playing with less than 3 players, remove all monster cards indicated with 3+ in the bottom right corner. Shuffle the level 1 monsters and add a Dark Council card to the bottom 4. Shuffle that up and add it to the bottom of the deck. In the level 2 monsters, shuffle those up. In the bottom 8, add the Dark Council, shuffle that up, add the remaining monsters on top, and add the level 1 monsters on top of the level 2 monsters. For the level 3 monsters, shuffle the Dark Council Arrives card into the bottom half of the deck. With 4 players, this will also be the bottom 4 cards. With less players, there may only be 2 in the bottom half. From the monster deck, draw the top 6 cards and place them in their matching locations. Looking at the Black Castle section, you can see that during setup, 2 monster cards were dealt out, so this area is considered overrun. Anytime there is more than 1 monster, the area is considered overrun. So if you take an action from any of these spaces without attacking the monster, you will gain either 1 additional peasant meeple or 2 if there is a third monster. Shuffle the location tiles and reveal the top 4. These are actions that you'll be adding to the game in the different for rent spots on the board. To finish off setup, place the upgrade cards for the 4 hero units and the 3 prestige units somewhere where all players can see them for reference. Much like the level 1 heroes printed on your player board, these heroes have their level and strength indicated on them, as well as any special ability. The Paladin, Ranger, and Shaman are prestige units that cannot be upgraded and are only available from specific locations or as a reward from specific quest cards. To begin the game, players draw 4 meeples from their bag and add them to the tavern. The player who drew the most gray corruption meeples will be the first player. If there is a tie, determine using any other random method. On your turn, you will use meeple units from your tavern to take actions during the development and main phases. Gray corruption meeples are not considered units and will never be used to take actions. Corruption meeples are really only useful for actions such as this, where any one meeple will gain additional strength for each corruption meeple in your lodgings. In this case, for my first turn, I only have 2 white meeple units to work with. During the development phase, you can take one of these 2 construction actions, but not both, as well as an upgrade action. This first construction action requires you to place 2 white meeples from your tavern, and then you can take one of the available tiles and place it in any for rent location, gaining the bonus underneath. And now this action space is available in the main phase action immediately. Alternatively, I can place a single white meeple here, gaining a white meeple from the supply, and also build in the same manner as this action. This simply adds an additional white meeple, which may dilute your bag over the game. Once all the 4 rent spaces on the board are covered up, these actions will no longer be useful. This upgrade action is available in addition to any construction action you take during the development phase. You simply place 1 meeple on this space and upgrade it 1 level per turn. So here, if I had a level 1 red cleric, I can upgrade it for 0 points and simply take the level 2 card and cover that space on my player board. If I already had a level 2 cleric on my board, it would cost 3 points, which I must already have, and I reduce my points on the scoreboard by 3, and I can flip this card over to its level 3 side, and now I have a much stronger ability. There are 4 location actions that will be available in every single game. At the cathedral, you can place 2 units of any type, and 1 is sent back to the supply. In return, you gain a red meeple. Place earned meeples from the supply onto the location space. During cleanup, these will be added to your lodgings on your player board. At the university, you can place 1 unit of any type and gain a yellow unit. The villages requires 1 peasant and 2 other units of any color, and I must remove one of those 2 units that isn't the peasant. In return, I gain a blue unit. The castle requires a blue and white unit, and in return, we gain the black knight unit. Later in the game, you'll be able to place on location tiles that have been constructed during the development phase. For example, the House of Lords allows me to place 1 white unit to gain an additional strength for all my black knight units this turn. Some location tiles are marked with a little black crown symbol. This is a sort of king of the hill type. So when I place my meeple there, it will stay there until the beginning of my next turn, and at the beginning of my turn, depending on whether I placed a white or yellow unit, I will get the associated action, which in this case is either draw 1 meeple or draw 2 meeples. It's recommended to place your player token on there so you know whose meeple that is, because if any other player on their turn decides to take this before it comes back to beginning of your turn, you simply take your meeple back. If a player takes any of the action spaces in the village's area, and there are monsters in either the 2 or 3 spot of this location, they will gain meeples depending on how many monsters. Here there are 2 monsters, so for each action space I decide to use in the villages, I will gain an additional white meeple, unless I am also attacking one of the 2 monsters in this area. To defeat a monster, players place units with a total strength equal to or greater than the health of the monster. In this case, I can place 3 white meeples and defeat this monster. It is also permitted to overkill a monster. For example, if I wanted to complete this goal card of defeating a monster using a cleric and 2 knights, I can defeat this monster with a strength of 5, even though it only takes 3. Players remove the monster card that they defeat, scoring the points and any bonuses marked on the card, and add the monster to their defeated pile. To be clear, if I use the House of Lords location, I would gain an additional white meeple because this area of the board is overrun, unless I attack this monster on the same turn, in which case I would be defeating a monster and the peasants feel safe and do not flock to my location. However, if I was using this space and not attacking any monster, and there were 3 overrunning the space, I would gain 2 additional peasants for using this location. In the draw phase, players will carry out the following steps in order. Shift all monster cards down to the lower numbered slots in every district on the city board, and then draw a number of monsters equal to the number of monsters you defeated this turn, placing them in the indicated districts on their cards. If any district is ever overrun, the player drawing that card can choose which district they want to place this monster in. If when replacing a monster, a player draws the Dark Council Arrives card, place it next to the Dark Council board and carry out the steps based on the number of Dark Council Arrives cards that have been revealed. If it is the first card, all players will add a Corruption meeple to their bags and draw 1 additional meeple in all future draw phases, going from drawing 4 meeples to 5 meeples each turn. When the second card is drawn, players will add another Corruption meeple to their bags and draw an additional meeple in all future draw phases, now drawing 6 per turn. Drawing the third Dark Council Arrives card triggers the end of the game. Players will have 2 more turns before final scoring, during which they can assign meeples to attack the Dark Overlords and the henchmen. After finishing the steps on the Dark Council Arrives card, continue drawing monsters until there are 6 on the city board. Players will take all their meeples off the city board and place them in their lodgings, and move any remaining meeples from their tavern to their lodging, and then draw a new hand of 4 meeples or more if there are Dark Council Arrives cards revealed. If when drawing meeples from your bag you don't have enough to draw 4, draw until your bag is empty and place all meeples from your lodgings back in your bag and draw however many you need to get up to 4. You may now activate any draw phase effects from things such as ongoing quests, or reveal any quests you've completed by drawing a specific combination of meeples into your tavern. If you constructed a location tile this turn, reveal a new location tile so there are 4 available in the supply. Combat with a Dark Overlord or henchman during the final turns is very similar to combat with a regular monster. However, Dark Overlords and henchmen do not die and can be defeated by other players. However, each player can only defeat each Dark Overlord once. The henchman can be killed on both final turns. When you defeat a Dark Overlord, mark it with your player token to show you've already defeated this monster. The monster type symbols on the Dark Overlord cards count for combat advantages, but do not count for endgame goals, as you will not be collecting these cards into your defeated pile. All the Dark Overlords score 6 points each, plus additional points for not assigning specific unit types. There are additional bonus points which change from game to game for defeating a monster. For example, here, defeating Sap Succula with 3 more strength than necessary will score you an additional 3 points. And defeating Sauron with 3 or more corruption meeples in your lodgings will score you 3 additional points. Some of these bonuses are specific to the units you assign to defeat the monster, while others are just the current game scenario when you defeat this monster, such as having the lowest number of victory points. After all players have taken their final 2 turns, add points for your completed endgame quests, and subtract points for any quests you didn't complete. And the player with the most points wins the game. I know that was a lot to take in, so if you have any rules questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to get you an answer. Now on to my review. I found Meeples and Monsters to be a good game, hindered by some rule ambiguities that give players a bad first impression and make it hard to get them back to the table to give it a second look. My first playthroughs were far from smooth. We were checking the rules constantly for a lot of little details and often not finding concrete answers. These are things like the quest cards that require you to defeat monsters with specific meeples. Is it those meeples exactly and you have to upgrade them to be strong enough to defeat the monster on their own? Or is it those meeples and any additional meeples you need to defeat the monster? Are Dark Overlords considered monsters for those quests and for prestige unit abilities and other things? Does the henchman get a bonus tile? The rules say no, but the setup illustrations show that it should. So these may be smaller things, but one big point of confusion was combat bonuses. Our first plays, it appeared that those were weaknesses for that specific monster. If you use that unit type, it was stronger against that monster. But if you read one of the small example boxes in the rules, it's more clear that those are bonuses you earn permanently, so your hero is a lot stronger. This took the game from being really long and having an unsatisfactory ending where you could draw a hand of meeples and not be able to defeat anything, to a much faster game where you're defeating monsters really quickly, and if you're not defeating 2 Dark Overlords on your final turns, you're at least defeating the henchmen. There were some other awkward logistical things, like the prestige unit tiles having a supply of 3 meeples on them, but players are conditioned to pull all meeples off the board at the end of their turn, so they have to remember to not grab those ones, or the King of the Hill meeples, so that was a little bit fiddly, and the theme isn't really a plus or minus here. It's pretty generic fantasy, and the name Meeples and Monsters probably isn't going to help you attract like non-board gamers who have no idea what a meeple is. However, I still find it really exciting pulling meeples from the bag, hoping for specific units, and it's super satisfying to get those extra draws and have a ton of meeples to work with on your turn. Or find those action combinations that put meeples back into your bag or back into your tavern to ensure you have them on your next turn, because there's no way to save meeples from turn to turn otherwise. As well, Meeples and Monsters has the specific style of bag building I was looking for. Whereas other bag builders I really enjoy, like Orleans and Quacks of Quedlinburg, put the tokens you use on your turn back into the bag, which leads to situations where you spent a lot of time in the game accumulating a really powerful token, but you never get to pull it out and use it. Meeples and Monsters, as long as the game doesn't end, you'll eventually pull that prestige unit or upgraded unit and get to do something cool with it. For that, it will stay in my collection until another game comes along that uses bag building in the same way, but with a better, more streamlined gameplay experience. That's all for this video. If you found it useful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more board game videos to come.